At this point in time, Greg, I'd like to introduce Greg Sands, owner-operator, again, of 30 shops across 4 states. Greg is an active and monthly contributor to Motor Age magazine. He's also a person that's had spoke at various conventions around the country for ASA and some other industry-related agencies. So without further ado, Greg, thank you so much for coming on board, and we appreciate your time.
Thank you, Tim. Yeah, I thought this would be beneficial, and since we're talking about budgets going beyond about 30 minutes, it'll lose its strength. So I think I can do this in 30 minutes. And please pay close attention, because you're going to find a couple of things that may make sense to you. So let's get rolling. The biggest thing with the budget, and I think I want to really get into correcting some mistakes that people have. I think the main thing to realize is that, a budget is really part of your goal setting. It's the written down part. We like to say, what is the difference between a wish and a goal? And a goal is something that you measure. It's specific, it's achievable, it's realistic. And right there is where a lot of people go wrong when they're writing a budget. But it's your playbook. It's also not something that you go, hey, I'm just going to, it's a new month, new year, I'm just going to wing it, and, suddenly I'm going to hit these big numbers. And so this is where the budget, why do budgets fail? The biggest is that, and I've done this for years when I started out, is I would write a budget, and then I'd write it with these perfect, numbers. And by February, I'd already blown my budget so bad that, I didn't even want to look at them. And I learned a lot from that goal, because what I found out is that a budget isn't something that you go, okay, next month is January, I'm going to suddenly, I've been down in sales 10% every month, but suddenly I'm going to be up in sales in January. If you're thinking like that, you have to ask yourself, what are you going to do differently that's going to make this amazing change? What I would tell you guys to do is take a little different approach. Think if you had to bet money that January, February, and March, that your numbers that you write in your budget, that you could get deadly close to them. And that's a whole different ball game. So if I look at you in April, you can say, hey, I'm a couple $100 off or $1,000 off. If you take that approach, you really start looking at the budget differently, because what you don't want to do is write a budget, and because you're saying, hey, I'm going to do these high sales, that now I can spend more money. Well, what happens if you don't? So there's a few things that I do, and this will go really quick, and I think it'll make sense to you. When you start to write a budget, you always want to compare last year. So, and then compare the last 3 months. So what that means is, if I look at October, November, and December, and let's say I'm trending down 10%, if that's the case, I'm going to write my first budget in January down 10%. That's probably where you're going to be. Now you may say, well, yeah, but last year we had a bad snowstorm, and we didn't have enough technicians. Well, that may be true, but you can go back 2 years back and look and see how did your January do, and how did your trailing 3 months compare to 2 years ago. So to make it simple, write January, write a budget that you feel like you can really, really hit. That's probably the most important month of the year if you're not used to using a budget. So look at your last 3 months. If you're trending down, if you're not doing anything different, if you're not advertising, or you've added a technician, or maybe a road has opened up, if you don't see a big difference, then you have to follow the trend. It's our job as owners to break the trend, to break the cycle. This is a big one too, which is, don't be afraid to revise your budget. If you notice, if you watch the stock market, you'll notice that analysts are constantly revising the budgets for, Fortune 500 companies, for large companies. They come out with, here's where we're at, and then the analysts would go, well, based on that, if they're trending down, then we need to change the trend. And it's the same deal with the upside. Some of you that have never written a budget before will make so much more money. It's scary. If you don't write a budget and you're not using P&Ls, which go hand in hand, then what'll happen is you're just guessing, and you'll probably, I've talked to enough of you over the last probably 2 or 3 weeks that's one of the things that come up is that it's almost like a diet. Well, I'm getting started and I'm all gung-ho, and then life happens and we don't really follow the budgets that well. The budget really has to have two things with it too. If you don't print timely profit and loss statements, then a budget is pretty worthless. So that's one of the things that I would challenge you guys to do, is make sure that you do a profit and loss statement every month. I've had so many people tell me that, I'm not a numbers guy. I don't think anybody really is. The numbers, it's so important that you stick to your numbers, and I'll tell you how I do it in a second. This is a sample of an actual budget of ours. So it's a little bit sloppy, but I wanted you guys to get a real life experience. So here is a real life budget. So if you look at this store, their goal is to hit 90,000 in sales. Now it breaks down, and we take this right off of the trend. So if you're using Auto Writer or Mitchell, or we use what do we use for? For the accounting softwares. There's QuickBooks. So we can pull right off of this to write our budgets. Now I always write them manually, and then I have the folks in my office put them on a spreadsheet for me. But I still like the old-fashioned way of handwriting a budget. And I'll write the first 3 months. You don't have to write the whole year, because chances are things are going to change. Hopefully, by following a budget, you'll hold yourself accountable to the spending part. So this first part of the income statement, this is what I've always called finesse. This is where the management really takes hold. So it starts at income, and you have sales. You have parts sales, labor sales. Some of our stores are more 50-50. This store trends more towards parts and labor. This is our state inspections that we do every month. This is our towing sales. And this is our goal, which is 90,000. There's cash over and short, customer refunds. This particular store has had the same people in the store a long time, so when we looked at the trailing 3 months, we didn't see a lot of cash over shorts or adjustments. On some of our budgets, we have that. So this is the cost of sales. This is still what I call finesse. So you have the sales side. This is where management comes to play. Most of making money starts and ends here. So you can take my numbers. If you want a copy of this budget and figure out what my parts costs are, my parts markup is, or how much I'm charging technicians or paying technicians, feel free to do that. But I wanted to point out what these are. The parts cost obviously is parts. If you notice, I don't put in all these different variables. I don't put in parts that are sublet, like transmissions. I include them all in the same category. I found it's just easier for me to track it if it's all in one line, and I can always click on that button on parts cost and see what made up the parts cost itself. But I would tell you to make it fewer lines, not more. And if you look at this budget, it's being used by about 600 shops around the country. And people that there's really two types of managers. There's ones that do way overboard, and they got like 7 pages for a P&L. And then you got the guys that just don't do P&Ls, profit and loss statements. And you don't want to be either one of those guys. You want it so simple that really 1 or 2 pages is all you need. So you could say, well, what about tires? If you are a tire shop, you can add a line item to tires. We sell tires, but we just include it in parts. Because then it's easy for me to look at it and say, you know what, all I need is like we shoot for a 2.5 parts markup. Some stores do better, and but some do worse. Our goal is to hit at least a 60% gross profit. So that's our cost of sales. If you take the first part and you minus out your cost, that's going to give you your gross profit dollars. And the gross profit dollars, in this case, the cost of sales is 32,015. So you're looking at about 67,805 or 95. That's my gross profit. That's what I'm going to use to pay all my bills. So this is where the finesse is. Now I have general service here. So those are people that run parts for me. They're people that clean the bathrooms. They take customers home. This is state inspections. At this store, they don't have that many state inspections. We do very little wrecker service at this store because they live in a neighborhood, or the store is in a neighborhood. And then inventory variation has more to do with how you inventory your parts. You know, we inventory some parts, although as little as possible, and then and then what we do is, if there's a variation, it just simply means if I have $1,000 worth of parts and I bought $1,000 worth of parts, and at the end of the month I have $1,800 worth of parts, my inventory variation is $200. So it doesn't negatively impact your gross profit. This is where the budget is, which, if you see, there's probably some line items, and we'll go through them real quick, that you may not have if you have one store, but I can tell you why I think that there's an advantage to doing that. One is advertising, which we spend about $4,500 to $5,000 a store, and that's he put it all into one line item, but that really splits up our SEO, our direct mail, our anything that we do internally, email blast, things like that. Car, truck, and fuel expense. We have shuttles that we take people to home or work, and so we spend about $400 in fuel expense. Credit card fees. This fee is really it's delayed 1 month, so if you have a big month, it can help you. If not, but that just comes right off the statement. Depreciation is for, and we're going to give you a list of this, but depreciation is for, equipment that you're writing off over time. In this given month, we don't have any employee benefits. We do have 401ks, but we don't have anyone at that particular store in our 401k. $100 for entertainment and meals. We let them buy pizza when we're real busy, but we want to keep that to a minimum. We have video cameras at all of our stores, so this is for our surveillance and our alarm system. Insurance general, you know what that is, and workers' comp. Repairs and maintenance, this is a thing that we use for anything that's wrong with or that needs work on at the shop. So we push that really hard. That can get out of whack. Same deal with shop supplies. That's going to be anything, pencils, paper, all that stuff that you use at the front counter. Promotions and conventions, we don't have any now, but I usually take the guys to 1 or 2 of the events that I speak at a year. Let me see, is that a little bit off? No. I guess it went right to here. Yeah. The rent, which is an area that you guys may either you save money on or you're higher, but this particular store, the rent is pretty high at $12,800, I think. And then management expense is $8,500. That's a general manager, and that is an assistant manager, and we split one manager this month at that store. We'll go up to 3-man fronts in March. Regional expense is paid at corporate, so they don't see that expense. Payroll taxes, you know what that is. Shop supplies, that's all the extra, the towels and the little seat deals and all that stuff that goes there. Utilities, telephone, we split it up in 2. Telephone used to be a real big expense, but as technology's improved, we've noticed that really our phone bills are not that big, and that's, I believe, 5 lines. It's all over the internet. And then uniforms, all of our people are in uniforms, and it's about $100 a week. And then we're in the wintertime right now, so utilities will run $1,200. It can run as high as $2,000. This is a big one that I thought some of you guys would be interested in, and that's we've always charged corporate for all of our stores, and you can set it at whatever amount you want, or you don't have to do it. But what that means is as an owner, you may decide, hey, I want to buy something this month, but if you do, it blows the P&L and it disincentivizes your general manager. So what we've done is we've always had a corporate charge, which includes me in it, so that if I buy something, if I buy a car or I take somebody to dinner or whatever, it's all lumped into that corporate charge. That way your general manager and your management team can predict what their numbers are going to look like. There's nothing more demotivating than a general manager having a big month, record month, and then get told, hey, the boss just bought a boat. Or, we just, went on a Hawaii trip where we went to a convention and we're writing it off this month. And I never thought that was fair. And so, but now I have 30 stores, so that's $180,000 a month in corporate charges. But that includes anything that I do. It also includes any new stores that we're developing, so people don't get hit with those charges. So you'll just have to look at that and see if this is something that you'd want to do. On this particular store, on 90,000, after corporate, it'll net 16,000, and which for us, anything north of 15,000, and a lot of our stores are fine. We do have stores that'll hit 30 or 40,000. So as the sales, if you've got a store that's doing 120s, well, you're going to have a lot more flow through. Your expenses at G&A shouldn't go up a lot. So you may, if you're doing 120,000 sales, your total G&A expense might go up to 47,000. So the flow through is huge if you look at the numbers, and that's the name of the game. Okay, so these are the key things that I want you guys to walk away with today, and that is that you want to always start with the correct information. Remember what we talked about, trailing 3 months. Look, are you up or down? If you're down in sales 10%, write your January down 10%. You probably won't change it. But start thinking about how I can change my business so that I can go from being down 10% to maybe break even in January or February to starting to grow my business again in March. There's a lot of things that we have online that can help you do that. Stick with the 3 bases of a goal, which is, this is the budget. You write it down, make sure it's achievable, and of course by writing it down, make sure it's measurable. Anything that you tell your guys to do, you want to measure it. Now, how we handle it, every week I get an update from my guys on where they're at compared to goal or to budget. So that's a big part of, like for example, if you have $400 in car, truck, and fuel, after the first week, if they've spent $200, I know they're probably going to blow that budget. So where are they going to make up the ground? And that's the other thing. So when you look at your expenses, look at that total bottom line. When it says $41,894, that's the number that you want to be. Not every line item is going to be exactly as your budget, but you want your overall budget to come in at that $41,894. So I'm constantly having to look and go, okay, we've underspent in this area. We can make up some ground if we've spent too much in another area. And then the final thing is, don't be afraid to revise your budget. Don't get discouraged. That's what happens when people are writing budgets. They write them, they're way overblown, they get discouraged, they say, hey, it doesn't work, and when in fact it really does work. So that's the gist of the budget. I wanted it to be really straight, simple, so that I could show you guys how to do it, and I'll open up to questions right now. If somebody has a question, just raise your hand.
And guys, yeah, if you've not done this before, there's a little hand there that you can click on, and you can raise your hand, and I'll go ahead and unmute you so you can talk. Okay, we have Jason Malo. Can you hear us? Jason?
Yes, I can.
Hey, Jason.
Hi, Jason. What's your question?
Hi.
Hi.
The first question I had, and this is somewhat to deal with the budget, but also as far as the profitability aspect of things goes. Do you guys have any suggestions on how to handle dealer parts as far as the profitability? I know you mentioned 2.5% is how you do the markups. How do you handle like a dealer part that you don't get much of a discount on?
We have a sliding scale. Are you part of Auto Rider or Mitchell?
Arrow Rider.
Okay, well we use Auto Rider, and we plug in there a sliding scale. There's one for dealership parts. There's another one for aftermarket parts, and we live by that. And so we don't go below. Like if you take a dealership part, very
Yep.
seldom we have a lot of room. Let's say the part is $50, we'll times it 1.5. So that's about as low as you can go. And that's where the guys at the stores have to make a decision. There's times if you're doing really well on your parts markup, you can go a little lower if you have to get the sale. But that's a call that the store operator has to make, because he ultimately has to hit his number at 60% gross profit. This one is written for like 64% gross profit. This guy's been around a long time, but that's how we do it. We have two separate schematics, and you can get that on the Mudlick Mail website. If you email Tim, he can send you, and his email address is Greg. I'm sorry, Greg. It'd be Tim at mudlickmail.com, and we're happy to share that information.
Yeah, and everybody on this call, guys, we're going to go ahead and send you those account descriptions that Greg was talking about through the budget. Everybody calls, kind of categorizes things maybe a little bit different. But Greg has allowed me then to share some of the ways he categorizes costs, and I'll have those available to you guys as well. Thanks so much, Jason. I'm going to move on to the next question. Again, if you have a question, if you could raise your hand and I will get to you. We're going to go to Kathy now. She's over in Florida. Kathy, can you hear us? Kathy, can you hear us? All right. Well, Kathy, if you want a question, please raise your hand and we'll come back to you. We're going to go to Mars over in Minnesota. Mars, how you doing?
Good. How are you guys doing?
Fine. How are you doing, Mars?
Good. Merry Christmas to everybody.
Merry Christmas.
Well, I had a question, two things. On your corporate expense, one thing that I've been thinking about doing with my manager is having a corporate expense to cover because I have loans, and it's hard to show somebody a P&L when it says, oh, you have all that money at the bottom. They don't see what leaks out to the balance sheet. So I was thinking about figuring out my monthly, principals and figuring that into at least my corporate expense. So, when he's looking at the P&L, he doesn't see, you know what I mean?
Yeah, the way you do that is you do have a corporate P&L, and that's the side that nobody sees, and that's depending on what you have. And you're right, it goes in the balance sheet. But what we do is if you look at depreciation, that's where the loan is really being paid down, where he's seeing, hey, I'm getting charged depreciation every month, but he's not getting double dipped and charged the loan as well. That's in your balance sheet. So
right, yeah. I mean, I had the interest part is always on the P&L, but the principal isn't on there. And so you're saying you put that in depreciation?
Yes. Yeah,
okay.
And that way they don't need to see what you're paying yourself. They don't need to see. That's why I like to do it this way. Is that I've just taken the P&L and said this is what I want them to do. If they do it well, I can bonus off of this. And the way I bonus, in case you guys want to know, I have what's called a triangle bonus, and I made that up. So it's the triangle bonus is really based off 3 parts, and that is 1 point of the triangle is sales. They have to beat last year. If they do, they get 4% of the net. Another point is gross profit. If they hit a 60% or better, they get 4%. And then finally, if they hit their car count. If their car count is up over last year, they can get 4%. So they can get as low as 0 or 4% to as high as 12. And to me, that if you notice what I didn't do is say ticket average. I'm very anti-ticket average because I think it's so manipulated that you won't really know how your advertising's working if you're advertising and people are coming in and they're not putting the ticket in the computer because they're afraid their ticket average is going to be affected. So we pay our bills with bottom line dollars. So we don't care about the ticket average as much as we care about getting our car count up every year and every month.
Yeah, exactly. Okay.
Well,
And the
thanks.
other thing I didn't see, and I apologize, shop supplies, I saw that you have those below the line. You keep
Yes.
those down in cost rather than sales.
Yes, and technically it can be up in cost of sales. I wrote this budget 19 years ago, and I've always kept it the same. So it's a little bit of a benefit for the stores. It also lets me know how far this budget has gone, because you're right, technically it would be up in gross profit, but we just have always left it there as a budgeted item. That's a good call.
Okay. All right. Okay, good. Well, thanks a lot.
You
Thanks,
bet.
Mars. We have a couple questions that were emailed in. The question is, it appears that your monthly payroll is approximately $22,000 per month. Is that consistent with all of your stores?
No, it's going to depend on how much sales you do. So, I mean, obviously, if you take your sales are 20 or 30% higher than this, you're going to see more technician rate. What we try to do is on general service, we shoot for 4%. And so if it's 4% on 90, it's going to be a lot higher on 120. So don't get hung up on that. Write the budget the way you do it. And some of you, if you've had staff members that's been around for years, you may be paying them a lot of money. You have to take that into consideration. I would not go to your staff and say, well, Greg only pays this much, so we're kicking you out, or we're going to cut your pay. That comes into performance. When you write a budget, you can say, hey, this is what I need to make for you to bonus. But that's every one of them are going to be a little bit different.
Okay, great. The next question that came in, and I'm going to go through the hands here in just a minute. I recently read an article in which Greg was talking about management staff. Does he have any tips for hiring service writers?
Yeah, I have to hire a lot of them. I think this year I couldn't even tell you. I think we're in maybe 60 service managers this year, which, let me tell you, I'm pretty burned out on hiring them. There's a lot of things you can do, but what I always look for, I call it track record hire. And this will save you a lot of time, especially if you hate doing interviews. I have a little list that I go by. For example, if I run an ad or if I'm out recruiting, if somebody has had more than 2 jobs in 5 years, I won't interview them. I want to see what their sales were at the place that they were at, if they were in the industry, so that I can see, hey, what he's asking me for pay, it's got to line up. It's got to be a good deal, just like anything else. It's got to be beneficial to you. If the guy that you have working there now is selling $50,000 a month, and this guy's track record says he's only ever sold 40, well, then you're going backwards. So it's just a little bit of prep work. The key when hiring a great service manager is that you can't settle. I tell my guys, you can't be taken if you're looking for somebody better. So, a lot of times a service writer will quit, and then there's this mad rush to hire somebody, and then the person you hire you're not happy with. What I recommend you do is, even if you're fully staffed, to really find 2 or 3 people out in the community that you really, really, really want to hire. You just don't have a position. And then what you want to do is periodically talk to them about, hey, I might have something open in April, or I might have something open in May. 2 things benefit you there. One is, if something happens to a service writer, you're immediately able to call them, and they're going to accept because they've been waiting. So the person you're recruiting goes, wow, this must be a great job, because I've been trying to get on with them for 6 months. If you notice, big companies do that very, very well. The other side of it is, it shows your current employees that people really do want to work for you, and that they want that job. That really helps when you're talking about, it's not to scare them or intimidate them, it really is to show them that they're part of a great company. Great question.
Good question. Okay. There's a couple of ways, guys. We have about 10 or 15 minutes before we wrap it up. 2 ways that you guys can send in questions. You can raise your hand if you want to talk directly to us, and I'll go ahead and click on you and allow you to ask that question and have some interaction with Greg. Or you can type in a question and then hit send, and it'll come to us, and we can review it that way. So We've got a few more on here, so if this is guys, I would really take this opportunity. If you have these questions, it's a very rare opportunity where we get to speak about this particular topic, and it's the perfect time of the year, as Greg has not just Mudlick Mail, but all of his stores around the country completing these, and a big part of the success is getting these written down. So I'm going to move on. I see Kathy's hands back up again. Kathy, can you hear me okay? Kathy? All right, Kathy, we keep having some problems hearing you, so I'm going to mute you back on there again. You can also send us that question, Kathy, if you would like. And so, okay, guys, I'm coming back again down here to see if there's anybody else has any additional questions. I see Kathy's hand up one more time. We're going to try Kathy one more time. Kathy, can you hear us? I don't think Kathy's there. Kathy, you can call me or just contact me later today. There's some problems with your audio. So we'll talk with you here again one more time. Okay, so here we have a message down here, a question. What are the three parts of the triangle you mentioned earlier again? Greg, give a couple seconds just to reply.
That's my bonus plan. And the three parts is one, sales, which they have to beat last year. So that if they do, they get 4% of sales. If you beat gross profit, which is 60%, you get an additional 4%. And then the final one is you have to be up in car count to get the other 4%. So let's say somebody misses their sales number, but they're up in car count and they're up in gross profit, I'll pay them 8%. If they miss sales and car count, then I'll pay them 4%. What I won't pay them is anybody that hits below a 60% gross profit doesn't get any bonus. That's the one non-negotiable. So that forces the managers to play by a set of rules where you don't get into giving away your product. And you want them focused on car count versus ticket average, because then you get a real idea how many people are truly coming through your shop. You're going to see your car count skyrocket. And then sales over last year, that's most people have that. We just say all you got to do is beat sales by last year by $1, and if you do, then you bonus. We do that because every year it's the same guy running the company, which is me, and I kill myself to beat the last year, before. So it's very hard to beat these numbers in mature stores. It's very easy in a store that's only a year or two old. Great question.
Okay, and does that wrap up to, there was a question about when you were saying 4%, was that 4% of net profit?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yes, it is 4% of net profit. So they can get as much of 12%. Now remember, I include 6K of corporate. So in that example, when that store made $16,000, the general manager would get 12% of that $16,000.
Okay, so yeah, that's a question I get a lot of times too, is that what percent of is that sales or what? So, okay, great. If we didn't answer that question clearly enough, guys, email me back. Our next question is, Greg, I noticed your stores are gorgeous with 12,000 plus rents. If my store is 1/4 of that, do I need to hit 60% gross profit, or should I even try?
Oh yeah, I mean Firestones are hitting 60s all over the country. I mean, just because your rent is lower, you may not be in an ideal area. Well, we've got 30 stores. There's some stores that I wished I didn't own, but we don't seem to have a problem with 60%. So I would stick to the 60%. Now, if you're not offering a good warranty and you're not delivering great service, or your place is just a real dump, then yeah, you're going to have a harder time, but you got bigger problems at that point. Even if I'm in a tough area or my store is real old, it's definitely going to be clean, and people are very forgiving as long as you have a clean store. And thank you for the compliment about our locations. I appreciate that.
Okay, another question was, do you have an example pie chart where you can try to keep your expense percentages, and could you explain that, how you would chart that out?
Well, the expenses that we use, if you're talking about what makes up each category, we are going to email that to everybody on here so you can see how to put it in each category. And so it's not really a pie chart, it's really Yeah, it's a description sheet, chart of accounts to help you put that in there. And then what we do is every week we have this online for ourselves. So we simply fill in the numbers. But, I did it for 10 years all manually. And I had, 10 years ago, I had I had 38 stores when I was still doing it manually. Was back in the 90s. And how you do that is you can keep a blank budget right there or a running budget. So let's say that, the uniform guy comes in today and he's wanting to dump off $400 worth of uniforms. Well, that's a problem. I have the disadvantage because I have to train, employees how to watch my cost. If I don't, no one's watching the cost. They'll just sign anything that walks in the door. Well, if they know to always look at the budget and ask yourself the question, hey, if this is over, like for us, if a uniform bill is over $100, they have to call in and say, hey, our uniforms bill is $300. We're going to find out right there before we sign the bill. That's the way you do it, and it's very easy. Just think about it as a running checkbook. You've got $41,000 or whatever it comes out for your store. Let's say you got $35,000 to work with. How well can you manage that $35,000 in the budget? The one thing I can't stress enough is if you will do this and just try, it's so critical. You will make more money if you've never done it. I'll make this prediction: 2013 will be your best year you've ever done, and it doesn't have to be complicated. That's why this is such a short conversation. It's nothing more than filling in the blanks where you think you are. Look at all your line items. The more research you do, put all your stuff in my P&L. In other words, if you have a great big P&L, look at my chart of accounts and say, okay, I'm just going to rebuild his, for November, and fill it out as if you're going to use my P&L. And if you do, then start to go, okay, now let's see how I compare to what he's doing, and how can I make improvements. There's some areas you're not going to be able to do better than me. There's other areas that you're going to blow me away. One of them is probably rent. You may say, hey, I don't need $6,000 at corporate. I bet you do, but that you might need to look at that.
Okay, we've got just a couple more minutes here, and then we'll have to wrap it up. So we have the last couple of questions. If you have any last-minute questions, guys, now is the time to email those in or raise your hand. Again, a lot of the information, too, that Greg's talking about, you can find at mudlickmail.com. If you log on to our Learning Center, it's through the Education tab. Click on Learning Center. The username is user, and the password is password. And a lot of these topics you're hearing about, Greg, on a monthly basis, provides some very valuable information in the Motor Age magazine that covers a lot of real-world, right-now kind of stuff. Okay, so the next question, Greg, is what is the average service writer making in one of your stores?
They would make around $35,000 to $45,000. We do pay 1.5% of their sales. If they sell $35,000 in a month, then we will pay 1.5% of sales. The way we structure our service writers' pay, if you came to me and you negotiated a pay, I'm very pretty easygoing about how I pay somebody. My goal is to have a service writer that writes a minimum of his yearly salary each month. So if a guy comes to work for me for $40,000, he has to sell $40,000. If he can't sell $40,000, then I've overpaid. If he can sell $50,000, well, I'll give him a raise. I won't move him right up to $50,000, but I'll give him a raise, periodically so that he can get his income up. Most of the time, we're looking at promotions at that point. But that's how we structure. Just take your 3 guys, times it by your yearly salary. So if you have a guy making 30, a guy with 40, and another guy at 30, that's 100,000. That's what you need to be doing in sales, and that's always worked for me. If you have a brand new manager, I typically will give him about 6 weeks to get under a belt. The one thing I've learned though, if a guy can't sell, he can't ever sell. I mean, you can have him for 6 months and thinking he's going to turn the corner, and he will never turn the corner. So I don't waste a lot of time. That just means I made a mistake in my hiring. Great question.
Okay, we've got probably 2 more, and then we're going to wrap it up for the day, guys. Greg, do you share this complete budget with everyone in your store, or only the general manager?
No, it's open to anyone that wants to see it and want to learn about it. Remember, your costs aren't in there. That's why I put a corporate fee. What I have found is that if you were to poll your guys, they're going to think that you're making way more money than what you really are. And if you want them on your side, you set it up to where, hey, I'm going to teach you guys how to run a business, and that's the way I approach it. So I'll teach you. But they're always shocked to go, you mean 90,000 in sales? I figured you made 30,000 or 40,000. And then when I explained to them, well, that's 16,000 net. So we still have to pay taxes on that as well. So we like to share, and you'll have people, that's who usually grows with you the fastest, are people that are interested. I think that's kind of our responsibility.
Okay, good question. Okay, I think we have one more here. Do you use an annual business plan to ensure the budget is followed? Business plan meaning a strategic plan from the different areas of a company, marketing, sales, expenses, HR, etc.
We do, but remember, the only difference between that and what I've told you guys today is I think it's very hard for somebody to plan out a whole year. If you look, with every year there's some off-the-wall thing that happens. And so I like to look at it by quarter. You can write a yearly plan and you can follow it. But our budget really is that. I mean, if we say we're going to spend $4,000 in advertising, we don't spend $8,000. If we know we're going to spend $8,000, we put $8,000 in there. So that way we're not, because you can look at the bottom line and think, oh my gosh, we're going to make $16,000 this month. Well, not if you bullshitted the numbers. It's not. You got to really look at it, look at your trailing 3 months, and go, okay, if my utilities bill has been $2,000 a month, chances are in January it's not going to go down. So make sure that you put the real numbers in there in your budget.
Craig, this is a question that comes up a lot. What if my store sells a lot of tires?
Yeah. What we do, and what I've recommend tire stores to do, is separate the tires. I was the largest Goodyear in the state of Texas in the 90s. And we sell tires, but I don't carry them anymore. I don't see the advantage to that. But we look at a minimum 25% markup because we can do a lot better than that if they'll take aftermarket tires. But we do put a separate line item at sales and gross profit for tires only, and we'll track that. At my current stores, I don't. We have a store in Tennessee that sells a lot of tires, and so we separate that out so we can see where we're at. But I still expect them to make a 60% with tires. And you can do it, provided that you're selling the warranties, that you have balances, alignments. They can be very profitable. Problem is when you get to a lot of stores, it's very hard to teach people how to make really good money on tires.
Okay, this will probably be our last question, guys. Does your service advisors have control over marketing costs? They could influence their pay by reducing the costs by canceling certain marketing if it costs too much.
No, I don't. There's certain things that we don't jack with because everybody in the industry looks at cutting back in marketing. But see, that's why I put that 1/3 of their bonuses on car count. I want them to see, if you're not growing your car count, if you've seen your car count dwindle, you're just going down a slow, painful death. Every year, your service advisor has to sell more on less cars, which upsets your current customers. So the next year you have less cars, and it's kind of self-fulfilling. I want them focused on getting new customers in there. Same way I don't punish them if their ticket average isn't that great, provided that they are using the concept, that we are checking out the car, we're using speed of service to make sure that customers have time to get extra repairs done when they come in. But no, that's an owner's job, and it should always remain an owner's job to set the marketing. And I'm real particular about what I do. I've done everything, but I'm very much into direct mail. I will give you guys a hot tip. There's a company in California that I think is the best company I've ever seen that handles SEO, pay-per-clicks. They build smart websites so they can update your website. And they're named Kukui, and they're Kukui. They're a small company, so if every one of you called, they couldn't handle you. But we've just switched over to them, and they do such a good job of you can track and see where your customers are coming for, and it ties into Mitchell and our writers. So let's say somebody comes off the internet and goes to your website, and then they come into your store. They set an appointment, come to your store. If they spent money, when you go to your little Kakui dashboard, it will show you what you made off of that customer. This is so new that I'm just getting ramped up in it, and I just think I always wanted something to make it really simple so I can handle my direct mail, my SEO, my online reputation, everything all at once. And they do email blasts and they do text message reminders for customers. So it's really the cutting edge. Great questions.
Well, very good, guys. Greg, any final thoughts to leave with these folks about budgets and overall? One of the biggest questions I get all the time as I go around the country is, how can I kick off 2013? What are the key elements? What are the must-dos so that I can do something different than I did last year? I want to get better. I want to be better. I want to make more money.
You got to write it down right now. Don't wait until January. Start working on the budget now. And if you get discouraged or you're having trouble, just send an email, either Tim or myself, or respond. We'll try to help you as best we can. I didn't want this to be anything that this is just friend to friend. We're not selling nothing. We're not going to hit you up for anything. We'd really like to see independents do a lot better and make more money in 2013. There's a lot of them that went out of business this year, and you just don't want to be one of those guys. I'd rather be working with independents than huge shop owners that already have this figured out. It's much more gratifying.
Very good. Well, guys, we really appreciate you coming on board. I will let you know there's a lot of this great webinars that Greg talks about. A lot of the documents he uses are on our website. You can go to mudlickmail.com. If you click on make sure that you don't click on the customer login. You actually have to click on a tab. It's the education tab, and then there'll be a learning center button that will open back up, or a drop down. Click on that, and you'll have a username and password request. The username is user, USER, and the password is Mudlick. On there's a lot of documents that Greg uses, from scripts to overcoming objections, his pay plans, a lot of the things he touched on. We're going to be putting a lot of this webinar will be recorded and placed on that as well. There's a lot of other webinars that he's done with some of the top shop owners in the country about how we overcome objections, dealing with customers, customer pathway. Our goal at Mudlick is to partner with you guys and give you some critical information to grow. I'd encourage you to check out the articles that Greg writes in Motor Age. I think January and February he's really talking about employee theft and vendor theft and how to make sure you're not getting really taken advantage of. And so there's some great information there about how to make sure you protect yourself and make sure you maximize your profits with your vendors. And the other thing that you're going to find in March, and I'll kind of tease you with it, but Greg's going to talk about what are the dangers of an independent shop owner, because there's some significant changes and dangers that are happening out there that you all need to be aware of. And so look for that article to come out in March for Motor Age. We appreciate your time. Again, thank you so much. If anybody has any trouble logging onto the website, please go ahead and email me at tim@mudlickmail.com, and one of myself or my staff will get with you. Again, the log-on information is username is user, USER. Password is Mudlick, MUDLICK. Thank you again so much for your time, guys. Have a great day. And very Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays.
Thank you, guys.